Robert Love of Lampton-Love earned the respect and admiration of his propane colleagues in the southern U.S. and across the country. Considered a friend to many and the best boss many of his employees has ever had. Love's word was his bond, and he was one of the finest gentlemen those close to him ever knew. As the late Milford Therrell, a fellow former Hall of Famer, once said, Robert Love was a man of high moral character who was committed to ethical principles personally and professionally.
Robert Love, who is described as the epitome of a Southern gentleman, was a beloved propane retailer who co-founded Mississippi-based Lampton-Love. Love's adventure in propane started in 1956 when he and Leslie Lampton, the chairman of the refining and chemicals conglomerate Ergon, partnered to bring Lampton-Love to life. Love was good with people, Lampton says, and Love built a solid foundation of employees that positioned the company to grow. Well remembered for his unselfish nature, Love also helped other propane retailers around Mississippi start and grow. He was extremely generous, sometimes to a fault, financing the startup of other propane businesses across the state by selling them wholesale gallons or a load of tanks. Love helped many people in the industry when they needed it, even though his generosity wasn't always reciprocated. Love garnered respect from retailers and industry advocates across much of the southern United States. When the time came for others to sell their businesses, Robert Love topped a number of sellers' lists. Love was a giver, putting much of his energy into the betterment of the propane industry. He was highly invested in associations, both at the state and national level. A recipient of the National LP Gas Association State Director of the Year Award, Love served the National Association as president in 1990. He was a voice for small marketers, too. His role in the formation of the LPG Risk Retention Group, which became a successful underwriter of liability insurance for its stockholders, is one example of how he stood up for marketers everywhere. Love, who died in 1993, is also remembered for his unique personality. Those who knew him described him as determined, serious, and sincere. Love's family, friends, and colleagues recall his meticulous nature. They recall how health-conscious he was, and how he always carried a jar of honey with him for use as a sweetener. They recall how his shirts were always pressed, and the crease in his trousers was always just right. As one industry advocate says, Robert was a successful and powerful leader, without ever wielding his power in a way that was anything other than graceful, diplomatic, and that of a true gentleman. He spoke to everyone and listened to and respected their opinions, whether they were a high-level executive in the industry or a newcomer.
I wrote this down because I thought there was a good chance I would start crying, and after what Bill Burns said, now I know for sure that I'll probably start crying. Thank y'all so much for this. This is such a wonderful thing that would mean so much to my dad. He loved this industry. He loved so many of you, and it'd really mean a lot to him, and I just thank you for it. It's funny, there's a country song right now, since we're in Nashville, that's at the top of the charts. It's called You Should Be Here. And the last few lyrics go, you know that if I could have just one wish, it would be that you didn't have to miss this. I wish you could be here. And I wish you could be here now. I'd like to thank everybody with the LP Gas Magazine and the selection committee and the nominators and everybody that had a part in this. Thank you so much. To all of you that have already been put into the Hall of Fame, congratulations. To those coming in tonight, I'm very proud of you, and you're well deserving. Thank you. So glad to be a part of it. He would be very proud also to be sitting on this right alongside fellow Mississippian John Blossman. And now that I know that Bill Byrne went to Mississippi College, I'll claim him as well. Spent a little bit of time there. Dad got in the propane business. from little old small town Durant, Mississippi. He came down to Jackson, was working at J.C. Penney's in the shoe department. And his dad had died young. He had a little bit of money, and he found a friend. And he said, I've got this man that has a lot of desire to build a business. His name's Leslie Lampton. Why don't you go meet with him? So Dad went hat in hand to Mr. Lampton with something in the neighborhood. I never have gotten the whole story straight, with something in the neighborhood of $5,000. And Mr. Lampton said, sure, let's go into business. We're going to build gas stations. So he went out searching for real estate corners to build gas stations. 60 days in, they've bought no real estate, and Dad's hungry. And he says to Leslie Lampton, he says, Leslie, I've got to find something to do to earn some money. Well, Mr. Lampton, who now is known as the richest man in all of Mississippi, at that time said, there's no way I can let this $5,000 get away. And so a little propane business was for sale in McGee, Mississippi. And they bought that, and that ended up beginning of Lampton-Love Propane in 1956 that you saw on there. And it grew and has been a nice business, one that he loved, one that's been very, very good to the Love family, an industry that is just such a joy to be a part of. I guess in particular, if you're in a smaller company and really operating in the rural things, I tell people, where else can you put on your blue jeans and your boots and go to the cow sale to see your customers? That's where you go and you meet a lot of your propane customers. You go out to the country and you get to hang out with folks that you can sit down and visit with. Doesn't always have to be in something like this. He very much loved, as my speech, unfortunately, is a whole lot of what was said. He very much loved the associations. The Mississippi Association he served in, all the states that we were in, he was always a big part of it. NPGA, he just loved it. He loved being a director. He loved and was very honored to be able to march his way up through there. I think the crown jewel was him becoming NPGA president. I think one of his huge blows was that he had a very hard time being able to finish that year. But he really enjoyed the associations. He made many, many friends. That was mentioned as well. He made a lot of friends in the industry. And unfortunately, my generation, I think, and I'll speak for myself, I won't be general, we're a lot more apt to say, I can't wait to see so-and-so at the Southeastern. And that'll be it. That's our one time a year time that we'll get to see old so-and-so. But my dad and some of those guys that were building their businesses back then, they were real friends. Bill Burns was a real friend, and they vacationed together, they traveled together, we knew their children, and we couldn't wait to go to the beach at a convention and be around their kids that we had been vacationing with. We thought it was a vacation, it was actually a convention. And we would go down there and hang out with these kids that we had been with, you know, over the years. And those friendships were real. And look, people in this room and many, many others that aren't with us today, I can't tell you how much I appreciate the fact that so many were in Jackson, Mississippi for his death and his funeral and his visitation. Dan Myers, I specifically remember him being there, and so many more that traveled from far away that were just relationships that he had made in the propane business. He did love helping others. He put me on the retail side of the propane business, and so he's out there selling to John Doe. He's trying to sell them gas. He's giving them a bulk plant. He's financing their bobtails. They're cutting my price. I'm going to him and saying, Dad, what am I supposed to do? Just leave them alone. And I never could retaliate. I was always mad at him. And so But he did. He helped a lot of folks out in the industry. And I think that's because a lot of them were all coming in and growing together. They were all kind of starting out, and it was a business that was still growing at that time. And so those friendships did last. One thing, his memory was impeccable. But of all the things that stand out in my mind was, if he met you, all he had to do was just meet you in passing. And he knew your name from that point on. He knew your wife's name, and he could ask about your children by name. And it always just amazed me. I did not have that gift. And so he would come up to me and say, I want you to talk to so-and-so. Well, who is that? I'm 31, I'm 28, who knows what age I am. I've got little children running around. I'm really not paying much attention to the propane business. He'd say, son, you're Rob Love, you're with Lampton-Love, it's time for you to step up. It's time for you to take your spot. Well, if you saw some of the pictures, I finally figured out what really made him happy. I started having grandchildren. And that kind of got me off the hook. He loved those grandchildren. The pictures that you saw with the big smiles on his face were when he was with his grandchildren. Most of the rest of the time, he didn't smile. He had a good sense of humor. But he didn't smile a lot. He'd say something, he'd have a little smirk on his face, and that was about it. He died too young, too soon. He lived his life well. He worked hard. He was a man of integrity. He had many friends, and he's left a lasting legacy. He would be so happy. Thank y'all.